Good afternoon, and thank you for your presentation. I suppose the first question I want to ask is, can you confirm when the Minister will publish the AIM report? Because I think it's important the report is published to highlight the areas needing improvement and give a clearer picture of how the model is working practically. And also Budget 2024 highlighted some changes to how AIM is applied, so just even to get more information on that for both parents and providers. And just supposed to make the argument that AIM should really be extended to beyond the 3 hours in the morning, because students or children need supports in the afternoon as well if they're remaining in the service for the afternoon, and indeed even in after school. I would echo the concerns that my colleagues have raised around the second set of accounts as well, because I think it's causing a great deal of anxiety for many providers, and I don't really understand the rationale around it, because it's going to place a financial and administrative burden on providers. And I just think the gathering of the accounts are expensive. It could potentially be done through the revenue system instead, and it doesn't even comply with their current providers' financial year as well. On the rules around the entitlement of fees paid for absentee children, I just feel they're quite stringent and they're unworkable and they're out of step with other countries. I mean, for example, a child might be minded one afternoon by a grandparent or even a parent that doesn't work, and I mean that seems to be affecting then the capitation. I mean, that doesn't happen in a primary school, for example, or a secondary school. So if a child is absent or is taken out for a reason, obviously you monitor attendance, but you shouldn't have to account for every single day or every single half day as well. And I suppose I wonder if we can get an update on the pay talks, or if the department is working on a staffing strategy for the sector. I think working budget to budget is causing staffing issues, and it'd be better if there could be a 5-year budget rather than, or a 5-year plan rather than working from budget to budget, because AIM staff in particular are trained and they're working in the sector, and there's uncertainty from one year to the other what's going to happen, and many of them are leaving and going to work as SNAs or going to work for TUSLA. So I just think there needs to be more consultation done on that. And then you referred to capital funding. An issue that was brought up with me was a number of years ago the government encouraged primary schools to request preschools to provide a service on the same site, which many did. Now the school maybe has grown in numbers and the school requires that accommodation returned. And so childcare service providers are inquiring about capital funding for relocation, and they seem to think it's not available. So maybe you could clarify, can a childcare service that's in existence but needs to relocate because this primary school needs a space back, is there funding available to help that provider? Because it affects a number of providers. Thank you, Chair.
So just in relation to the AIM report that's been undertaken by the University of Derby, that is close to completion, and the Minister hopes to publish it by the end of this year. But as you've mentioned in relation to Budget 24, we are already looking to introduce enhancements to AIM on foot of findings from that evaluation. So the Budget 24 allocated an additional €14 million for the access and inclusion model. 7 million of that was to support an increasing number of children who are coming through the ECC programme requiring AIM support. So that's around 7,000 children this year. But there's an additional €7 million then allocated for an expansion of AIM beyond the ECC programme from September 24. And in the first phase of that expansion, the AIM supports will be extended to children who are ECCE children. So for those who may be in full day care or part-time provision in receipt of AIM supports, that they will be supported to stay beyond the 3 hours of the ECC programme. The funding is in place for in-term and out. So the ECC programme, as you know, runs from 38 weeks of the year, but this funding will allow a child to remain and have extended hours supported in early learning and care over a 52-week period, should that be what the parent is looking for. So those improvements will come into place from September of 2024. In relation to fee rules, I might invite Mark to talk about the NCS rules of attendance.
So look, I suppose there can be a little bit of a misunderstanding about these rules. I mean, the idea that if a child is picked up early, we take money back, that just doesn't happen. The scheme is designed to ensure that the money is spent as best as we possibly can on children who are in attendance and money following the child, and striking a balance with that and removing some uncertainties from providers by saying if attendance varies from week to week, it doesn't adjust the allocation unless it happens over quite an extended period. So they would get a notice at 8 weeks that there has been the amount of hours the parent indicated they wanted has to have been used, and after 12 weeks they would need to adjust if that hasn't happened. So it's reflecting what the parent actually wants from the provider, and the original design, as well as ensuring that the money follows the child, it also enabled, reflected the variant usage that parents have of provision. I mean, families don't always work 9 to 5, to work different days, to work shift work, they might need 3 days. Their actual need for provision varies greatly, so it enables them to articulate how many hours they would want, and then agree that with the provider and agree a measure of provision, and then the state is then helping to pay for the actual provision for children. So it's striking the balance between ensuring the money is used efficiently and making sure that there isn't this kind of there isn't wild fluxes in funding to services. And I suppose that the balance of that attendance-based model then needs to be taken in conjunction with, say, the core funding, which we've spoken about, other models that aren't related to attendance, that provide funding across the board, reflecting capacity, reflecting the attendance pieces, and making sure the parents aren't penalised for picking their children up early, which I've heard reported several times, but is not the case.
Okay, so I have heard that from providers. They said that that's been the case, and that they don't penalise the parent, but they then lose out themselves.
I mean, if it happens, like I said, if for 12 weeks the parent has not attended for the amount of hours they have agreed with the providers, then there's an adjustment.
Well, the indication they gave wasn't that long.
I appreciate it. And some of the older schemes, it was more restrictive. I think the National Childcare Scheme introduced a more flexible regime to actually reflecting some of the concerns. And we talked earlier of do we consult and engage with providers and listen. That was part of the feedback we had from providers to increase the amount of flexibility. But I know that providers can struggle some with the hours-based model, but it is there, and we have communicated that. We have tried to reinforce the communications of that flexibility with both parents and providers over time.